Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season finale of Krypton. A great season finale. A lot of stuff went down in this episode that we're going to have to break down. For one, it's obviously, it's like, well, how do we deal with this whole Brainiac situation? And it's interesting because we did hear from Zod last episode. It's like, oh, Val is still alive. It's like, well, how? Turns out he's been in the Phantom Zone the entire time. It's like, well, obviously you would know because you were in the Phantom Zone too. And because the whole thing about, well, time works differently, that's why, which is kind of sad because it's like he's been in there for 14 years on Krypton, but like God knows how long that is in, you know, time with the Phantom Zone. I mean, it's meant to be a prison. Like, I'm curious to see what it's, I mean, I guess like potentially in the future we could get to see what it looks like inside of that, but I don't know if they, how far they want to go to it. I don't know if there's been a lot, maybe some older Superman things did, to my recollection. I know Smallville did, but I'm trying to remember, has anything ever really tackled the Phantom Zone? I don't even think Supergirl's ever really shown what the Phantom Zone looks like, did it? Like when her and Fort Ross went into it, I think that's about it, but nevertheless, Val has been alive this entire time. The reason why Val is still in there is because Zod's the one that left him. It's like, which that should have been like moment number one, realizing like, even on Lyta's side, to be like, yeah, maybe don't be so trusting in your son because he's kind of a dick. In his mind, it's like, well, the fact of the matter is you could use me as a soldier, a Zod, more than you could some old man. It's like, still, Val's the one that's most knowledgeable. The fact is you betrayed him and left him there. The fact of the matter is you didn't, because it also should be a strike against him, because let's not forget, he knew this entire time. He only waited till now because it was not, and it was no, there's no other option, because he was thinking he could be the one that find the solution to this. I mean, obviously his big solution was going to be Doomsday, but for him, he thought he could handle this on his own, and now it's like, well, now we need to get Val. It's like, you could have both escaped, but then again, with his whole situation where he won't admit it, but his hate for the L family kind of runs deep. The whole Jor-El situation and stuff like that. So, which makes that whole situation of him working with Seg even more interesting. Even more so when it's like, oh yeah, he's actually half L himself, which is, it's kind of interesting because like, I don't know, it just seemed like he obviously harbors a lot of harsh feelings towards the L's and everything like that. Because once again, it's that whole, they're idealist while he's more of a man of action. That's just who the Zods are, you know? So, but what's interesting is Val was like, yeah, we can't do anything. It's like, what are you talking about? Basically, he's seen everything, the past, present, and the future. And basically, he's seen the multiple timelines, the different ways that things could possibly play out. Even the whole, like, Doomsday situations. Like, that's apparently the worst timeline, which I'm not too surprised about. Because Doomsday being the, like, adapter to any situation is like, yeah, there'd be pretty little to stop him under these circumstances. So, it kind of makes sense. I'm pretty sure even a planet exploding wouldn't be enough to kill him. I would assume not. Probably just fly him off to some other planet. He regenerates and come back even stronger and just move on from planet to planet. Mass destruction. I mean, that might be more aligned with who he is in the comic books anyway. But nevertheless, the fact of the matter is, like, Val is kind of like, yep, we're kind of just screwed, which is interesting because that's kind of what Adam was pushing for. But for Seg, it's like, for one, it's like, you always told us to believe in a better tomorrow. And it's like, look at you, you're not even willing to try. For him, it's like, well, that came from a naive old man who, you know, was, well, idealistic. But after all his time in the Phantom Zone, seeing that, he just thinks there's no way around it. Like, Kandor will die, will be taken, and that will eventually, later on down the road, lead to Krypton's destruction. But for Seg, it's like, that doesn't mean we have to stop here. We can, for one, like, get as many people out as we can. You had Lyta not willing to just back down. Her and Nyssa leave, each for their own reason. Also, like, it's pretty sweet that Dev gets the whole arm situation. I thought that was kind of a nice thing. But also, like, him and Lyta kind of whip the others into shape because it's like the others want to run away because they're scared. But it's like, we don't run. We're kind of the last line of defense. We are the tip of the spear that defends Kandor. We show mercy to no one, and we do not offer it. You know, so, I mean, sadly, in the end, it helped in the long run, but still, it was just kind of sad. Although Sagittari died, I can only assume it's because Brainiac got into all of Kandor's systems, so he knew probably, like, the self-destruct codes on all the skimmers, probably implanted in himself. So, like, with just closing one hand, he was able to blow them all up. So, I'm curious because he had talked about the fact is, like, Zod had talked about the fact is that there were fights against Brainiac. I guess were these exactly how they went down? Or is it because things went differently in this particular timeline to the point that, like, he ended up destroying the Zimmers because he got Skimmers because he got so enclosed with the system, because he got so close, he was able to have such high grade access to it, is what I'm trying to get at. So maybe that doesn't happen any other timeline. I don't know. And then it also comes down to that situation of like Zod, he thinks there's only one other solution to this whole situation. And that solution is turning Val over, because it's like, if we give him something that he's a collector and everything, we give him something special like Val, who's seen all these like all his experiences, knowing all the different time periods, like that knowledge could be his in exchange for Krypton, which Seg is like, no, that's stupid. Which, you know, initially it's like, Zod's kind of like, no, you're just doing that because you want to protect your grandfather over all the people. But for him, it's like, you're giving him access to all of that knowledge. All you're going to do is doom every other world out there. But for him, he doesn't care as long as Krypton. He even says himself later on, as long as you can have the rest of the universe, as long as Krypton is mine. Which, once again, it's like, because this is what Jaina wanted to avoid. It's what Lyta wasn't willing to see, because I think she was blinded by the fact is that she thought that this is the best option. Plus, it was coming from her son. So I thought maybe she wasn't willing to see things. I mean, it seemed like even Seg was able to kind of separate things, but it's like a mother, you know, even though it hasn't been created yet, that motherly bond still exists. So I guess she was willing to follow what Zod wanted, you know? So it's so interesting because, you know, it seems like in the end, he's no different than Darren. It's like, what did Darren want? He just wanted to kind of be left in power too. And it's like, you've proven yourself just to be the same way, which, I mean, we kind of knew not to trust Zod from the very beginning. Adam was like, don't trust Zod. And it took a while, but even like, you know, because of Jaina's warning and the whole Doomsday situation, Seg came to realize that, but like sadly, Lyta just didn't come to that same conclusion. So, you know, it's actually kind of interesting because I actually halfway expected Seg to actually, before Zod would even get a chance, I thought he was going to try and lock him back. Like in my idiotic mind, I was like, right, you can't just open up the Phantom Zone anywhere you want to. It has to be in that specific spot. But I was like because I was like, oh, like the moment his back is turned on, you're going to do is push him into like the Phantom Zone. Lyta might be a little bit pissed about it. But I was like, okay, obviously you had to do it. And I was like, right, you'd have to be in that specific room to open it because that's the only portal to the Phantom Zone right now. So that ended up being the case. So obviously couldn't just take him out of the equation then. But he did lead them all into a trap, and that led to him putting Brainiac into the Phantom Zone. Didn't expect things to kind of turn out like that. I honestly had no idea how it would turn out. And it's like, oh my God, he's getting sucked in. And then lo and behold, the cape starts filling back in. I'm like, yo! I was like, that's awesome. And then he takes Seg with him, which Seg tells Val, like, believe in a better tomorrow. Start believing in one again and get sucked into the Phantom Zone. Because all that talk about Seg not willing to make the ultimate sacrifice, I didn't see you doing something like that. You were so content in your way of believing that this was the only way. Just like Val, you thought your way was the only way, and Val kind of thought there was no way. But Seg wanted to find a different way of dealing with the whole Brainiac situation, which he did. But the cape was still there, so it's kind of like, oh, everything's okay. It's like, okay, we can get Seg out. Nope. He destroys it, because it's not only about stopping Brainiac, because I'm sure it crossed Zod's mind too, because without Seg being there, there is no Jor-El, there is no Kal-El, so that means there's no Clark, that means there's no Superman. So obviously he wants to do, like, it's because it's so interesting, because you want to believe that on some level he did do it for the betterment of, like, no, I want to make sure that Krypton survives. It's like, obviously you have the best of intentions because you want to make sure the people of Krypton survive. That's something you and Seg could agree on. That's what you originally agreed on. Like, obviously Adam was kind of like, oh, like, let Krypton get destroyed because it has to make sure that the rest of the universe stays safe. But Seg wasn't all about willing to sacrifice other worlds just to ensure that the people he cares about and the world he cares about stays alive. Zod only cares about it because it's his throne, which he can then use to kind of conquer other places and conquer other thrones, as we kind of seen in the episode. I'll kind of break that down in a bit. So, but what really tripped me out is I was like, okay, so I guess as long as the symbol's there, that means Seg's still alive and everything's okay. But then it shifts and turns into a Zod symbol. I'm like, what? And it cuts to like a month later, Zod is taking control. And basically he's kind of doing this thing of like, oh, we'll go to other worlds and they'll basically serve us. If they don't, then they will all, essentially his catchphrase, kneel before Zod. You even see Dev and Lyta's faces, because like they realize kind of like what they've kind of created, what they've kind of turned Krypton, well, Kandor City in particular. I mean, also what this means for the other cities, because I'm sure. I mean, because it's like, because in their mind they thought the same thing. It's like, oh, the same thing that happened to Val. He got a corrupt group that punished him, and it's like, no, that wasn't the case. Like Zod was just a fanatic in his own right, and it was kind of a good thing that he kind of got locked away. I mean, I guess maybe you could make the argument because he was locked away, he ended up becoming the fanatic that he did. It's actually kind of interesting because it's something I didn't even think about. Because it's like, right, because he's from the future, right, and this is the same Zod that knows Superman. He knows Clark is Superman, so that means they've battled it out. So this is a Zod that's escaped the Phantom Zone, not just escaped the Phantom Zone and came straight here, because it's like, well, obviously he had to get some kind of time device at some point in time, which is still never been clear, like how exactly he got here. We know how Adam got here. Did he get here by similar means or what? But then it turns into that situation of like, that means he had his whole experience with Superman, and he decided to kind of, like in his own right, he came back to destroy Superman too. Like by taking Krypton at such a young point in its, at such a point in its history, he can change everything, even like, you know, the universe's destiny. Even going as far as turning, like, oh, we're going to finally have a point for the rankless. Like he's getting rid of the divide in a certain sense of like, rankless are going to finally serve a purpose, and that's being Sagittari, basically turning regular people, regular citizens into warriors, into fighters, which is like, not everyone's built for that. Not everyone should be shifted into a warrior and fighter, but it's like building this army so that none other would ever dare cross Krypton, in particular Kandor City again, you know. So hell, even at the end we saw Cam kind of being put into that situation too, him being handed one, which is definitely going to be interesting seeing him going forward after the whole Ona situation. Like that's not going to be easy to kind of come back from, so I doubt he's going to necessarily be the same person. I'm curious to see whether that kind of translates when it comes to him being a Sagittari. It's kind of interesting because last time we left off, like SAG had sent him to another city. So that's also kind of like, I was wondering too about the whole like situation. Maybe they explained it, but I kind of missed it. It's like the other cities on Krypton. Like this is just about Kandor, but like like I said, he was in another city. Also, like, isn't the whole Rankless situation? Because I could have sworn that's like the biggest thing. Like, have they explained that that's something only in Kandor, or do other cities kind of follow that same social situation as well? I mean, because everything like Jack Sawyer was kind of doing, like the whole Black Zero situation, seemed like it was aimed specifically at Kandor. So I'm sure things kind of run differently. So I guess at some point in time, Kem came back afterwards, and so he got dragged back in, or maybe it's because he's from Kandor and because he's rankless. Maybe even if you leave the city, like they'll find out it's like, oh, here's a rankless. We don't know where he's at. Oh, there he is. Drag his ass back, type of thing. I don't know. Kind of interesting thought process. A very interesting thing was the whole Adam situation. It does seem like I was right, because another episode I figured it out, like where exactly Adam was, because it's like, oh, it's like, all right, the person, like I brought it up, was it last episode? I was like, right, that's got to be where he is. So I was immediately thinking like, oh, he's on Krypton. Obviously, he was on Krypton. Then I was like, maybe he accidentally flung to the future where it's a city taken, it's Kandor after it was taken by Brainiac. Turns out that's not the case at all. In fact, he's actually in a different city. It seems like he is potentially in the future, because when he looks, there's a gigantic, because I was looking at it, I was like, that's interesting. It could be another planet, but I'm pretty sure that's Earth. All those clothes and just the design and everything, like the city structure and stuff like that, it's like that looked like it was Earth. What city specifically, I don't know. Not unless that you don't think that's like I don't know. But what was interesting, though, is that there's a giant statue of Zod there. So that must mean that at some point in the future, his reign over other planets happened. Also meaning that he's on Brainiac's ship in the future, if that's the case. So that must mean at some point in time, in the timeline, Brainiac has to escape, you know? So that means that he still comes back, and obviously things don't work out because other planets still get taken and stuff like that. So I don't know. It's definitely going to be interesting. There's also that whole storyline with I wonder, is there any getting back from that? Like, oh, Adam situations really quickly too. I mean, I don't know. It'd be kind of interesting to see about that. But also it's a whole situation with Nissa, we learn about more, obviously, the whole clone project, obviously, that whole situation. Because basically, she's like, you don't even know what kind of part you played in all of this. Because obviously, she went back to get her son. That's what her whole situation was like. Her mistakes is like, yeah, I'll have to pay for them, but my son is innocent. That's why media was kind of like, huh? Like, you don't think they're going to change her son's name later on to like Jor-El or something like that? Just because he's a Vex, but that's also because, like, Seg isn't recognized as an L, so that's why I was kind of wondering about that. But I mean, I don't know. Maybe her son ends up being kind of a situation all on its own. But Nissa ends up learning that she herself is actually a clone. The real her was in the accident that killed her mom, and she was in such a state that there was still neuron stuff going on, so they transferred her consciousness into a clone, and that's what this whole eternal, like, it's kind of like, if you've seen Altered Carbon, it seems like it's very similar to a whole Altered Carbon situation to a certain degree. It seems like every memory she has of growing up and stuff like that is implanted. So I'm guessing at some point in time, like, I mean, do the clones even age? Is kind of the question. So was she always this way? And then, like, her whole childhood situation, like, did he, I guess it took a while. So maybe, like, they kept her out of the spotlight for a while. And then it's just kind of like, oh yeah, like, well, probably had to keep up the farce, so they probably just pretended like she was okay. She was just sick and just like hidden away. And after given enough time, they made her pop out, and it's like, oh yeah, she's grown. She's a grown woman now. Just because you haven't, I don't know. That's what I'm curious about. Because she did talk about the fact is that, like, she sacrificed so much, even her friends. It's like, well, that's probably why. Because Darren was trying to hide the fact is of what had happened to her. Like I said, that depends on if the clones can age or not. I don't know, like, how far their technology goes with this. I obviously, like, initially, Jax-O started this whole situation with wanting to cure people, but the higher ups in the ranks, like, perverted her thing, and as she brought up before previously, wanted to create eternal life. So I'm curious to see what goes down with the whole codex situation, because obviously they were going to take it to another city, but I guess the last thing you want is that codex to be in someone like Zod's hand. So I guess it's a good thing you got it out of there when you did, because I guess that codex holds all the formulas to continue this. Like, if you destroyed all those clones, there'd be no going back for people. Well, I was about to say, do you think, is there one of Val in there, or like of Seg's parents? I was like, nah, because by the time like Seg's parents were like, if there were any of them, they'd most likely be destroyed anyway, just because they ended up losing their rank and stuff like that. So I don't know, it's just something to kind of think about. And then finally, we had the big thing at the very end where we see Doomsday is breaking free, which once again, very interesting considering the fact is nothing to our knowledge on Krypton could stop that unstoppable killing machine. Just like Val said, that's the worst potential timeline. So like I said, I'm like I said, overall, this is like a great season finale because it's set so, like, I do appreciate it. And it's something like they were brought it up at the beginning of the show. This isn't a prequel. It is a show all on its own, because obviously it's a story of messing with the timeline. And like, it's one of those things of like, with time travel and stuff like that, you always remember that it changes. But this is a story that needs to be told of like how things went down on Krypton, how so much change. Obviously we see with Zod's situation. Because it's kind of interesting, because Adam tried so hard to change the timeline to make sure that things kind of worked out. But interestingly enough, it does seem like Brainiac was the threat, which is interesting, considering the whole fact of the matter is that, why is that a threat? Like, if that was kind of potentially going to happen anyway, why was that the potential threat to Superman's future? Because the moment Brainiac was getting sucked up into the Phantom Zone, it started coming back, and it solidified, and the moment Zod stuck around it, he kind of took over that whole situation. So it does beg the question, like, how does he go about conquering other planets and stuff like that? Like, obviously he's got to get old at some point in time. I mean, that was kind of the whole thing he brought up to Jano, was the whole like, oh yeah, go to Earth. I guess that'd be the first stop, because once you get there, suck in that solar radiation of a yellow sun, and boom, you're ready to conquer some planets. I mean, not only that, he will have an entire army of people with powers like him, with no one else to stop him. So that's definitely going to be interesting going forward. Like I said, I'm curious to see what happens with the whole Adam situation. It's kind of hard to say whether Adam did good coming back in time, or whether he's kind of the reason why things ended up the way they did. Like I said, we still don't know how Zod ended up managing to do what he did. Like, what technology led him to doing that. What about the people that are supposed to be guarding Doomsday? We know they were going to leave him there, and they're just like, oh yeah, it's no longer a problem. Funny you say that, because now it's going to be your problem, because now Doomsday is going to be released on Krypton, and like even no matter where you go, you will be hunted down by this thing because it will rip through every city it gets the chance to. Because it has been a month, and I guess that stasis field finally broke down after all of this time. So. But at the end as well, it seems that Val's trying to repair the machine that kind of leads to the Phantom Zone. But we also see Jaxor and Nyssa coming to his rescue. It makes you wonder secretly, has Dex and Lyta been helping too once they found out the situation? I would assume no matter what, Lyta would help because it is SAG. So that look must have been like, okay, we got to be careful because we're in dangerous territory because we're betraying like the most powerful men that everyone on this planet is like, oh yeah, he's our savior, kind of. Like, I don't know if SAG gets the recognition for what he did. It's most likely like only select few people might know what happened with SAG. That might even be one of the reasons why Kim came back. It's like, oh, so it's like, why now out of any time do you come back to Kandor, especially after everything that went down? It must be because he might be part of this whole situation. So, like I said, because Adam also now knows about Brainiac's future too, that eventually he gets out and claims other worlds, and especially now also it's going to be interesting because he also was talking about killing Zod, and it's like, oh, like maybe that's going to be Zod's future, that battles Superman, eventually go back in time, trying to take control of Krypton and end up dying for it. I don't know. It's definitely going to be very interesting to see. Obviously, the show is being renewed for a second season. I'm so interested to see. I was so curious. It's like, so where do you go from here? It's like, oh, things are still kind of left a little open-ended. Not only Brainiac's kind of taken out of the picture for now, but now we have the whole Doomsday situation to deal with, and obviously just kind of how Kandor is being run now. And so many interesting, like, it's not like things are complete. It's like, nope, so many threads still needing to kind of be pulled. I mean, we know that Garen is still alive. I mean, he crashed and everything, but he's a cockroach. There's no way he's dead. So he's probably all kind of taking advantage of this situation. I mean, now that Brainiac's kind of been removed from the situation, I'm sure he's still going to bide his time until he can get the power he needs to take over. Obviously, whoever remains a Black Zero is probably going to be backing Val, because everything that Zod's trying to create is the exact same thing that Black Zero is trying to destroy. So, and we also can't forget about Jaina's situation. She was rescued by her brother. It's been a month, so I can only assume that she's like fully healed up. So she's probably just waiting for her moment to counter strike. Like I said, it's been a month, so maybe when the next season starts, we'll kind of get a look in that month time. Like I said, everyone could be conspiring, like Nyssa, Val, Jaxor, Dex, Lyta, Jaina, Kim could all be working together to try and fix this situation. Trying to get Seg back while also trying to make sure that they don't get Brainiac back as well. So potentially could be what that is. Maybe it turns out not to be the case. Like, it's just because we still haven't not seen Hydra or hair Jaina subsequently since her brother rescued her in that other episode. It's kind of interesting because even Lyta kind of like felt so bad because it's like, my mom sacrificed everything she believed in for me, and when the time came for it, I didn't like sacrifice for her. Like, she chose Zod over her own mom. So to be fair, maybe you could make the arguments because of her upbringing that kind of led to her not having that belief. You know, like I said, it's a little bit of that situation of Lyta kind of letting her own. Cause I feel like a lot of who she was, like a lot of her actions were dictated because she kind of let Zod kind of get inside of her head and stuff like that. So I don't know. It's just kind of interesting things to kind of think about. So I'm curious to also see, are we going to see any other people from the future coming after Adam? Because it's like, yo, you have royally screwed up the timeline. So we've come here to kind of fix things potentially. Or do the people there kind of like, okay, we'll leave Adam to do what he needs to do. So like I said, it's going to be interesting to see what ultimately happens. Because it's also interesting too, because let's not forget, like Brainiac's ship disappeared too. Like, I mean, at least the tentacles like around the city disappeared, and it seemed like the ship was breaking apart and disappearing once Brainiac was sucked into. So maybe it's tied to his consciousness, so like it disappears. Also, side note, I didn't realize, I knew the ship was big, but I guess I don't know why I just never realized just how massive that thing is. I'm curious what the hell that ship is exactly, because like the bottom of it looks like a rib cage of something. It's almost like there was a monster that he hollowed out and made his own ship, or at the very least it's a planet itself that he hollowed out, or the remnants of a planet or something, or remnants of a monster that he hollowed out and made into a ship. That's just how I feel about it. Might be something he just built for himself. I don't really know that much about any other Brainiacs other than like Brainy 5, which Supergirl kind of brings up with his whole situation, sure, but he's the only other Brainiac I'm sure of. I'm not really that familiar with Brainiac species at all. 12th dimension beings and such. Which makes you wonder would a fifth being dimension be? I mean, they kind of have that borderline dimension breaking abilities. I would assume they. I know I'm kind of getting off subject here, but I'd assume they'd be able to take down someone like Brainiac. Nevertheless. The point I was trying to bring up before I went on that huge tangent is, I guess, like, the moment Brainiac pops back into reality, the ship goes with him. Maybe it's kind of like a manifestation that he can just kind of pop in and out. Maybe it kind of does die, but at some point in time, because Adam is on the ship potentially in the future, most likely in the future, that must mean that he like must rebuild it or something, or like it reconstitutes itself once he pops back into this reality. I don't know. Like I said, I'd be so interested to see if we get a look into the Phantom Zone or not, or will we ever get the Seg side of thing? Maybe get bits and pieces. Maybe we never get a full look, like what is actually in the Phantom Zone, because it's a place Zod didn't want to go back to. Val would rather die than go back to himself. So it's like, what is there? Like, especially at this point in time, what would exactly be in there, you know? So, especially with the whole, like, way time works in there and everything, too. So, I don't know, it's going to be interesting to see what that... Like I said, I'm excited to see what Season 2 has in store for us. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and good